Welcome back. This is Wayne Madsen with the Wayne Madsen Report, the Saturday Roundup, coming to you live this December 4th in Washington, D.C. And we've been talking to Byron about some interesting similarities between a comment from the Saudi king and one from Colin Powell before the Iraq War. Go ahead, Byron. We were talking about cutting off the head of the snake.
Yeah, well, you know, I've listened to a few diplomats from the Middle East. You know, I've seen the Syrian ambassador, the Lebanese ambassador, I've seen the Saudi ambassador.
Yeah.
And when they speak, they are very, very reserved in what they say. Now, I suppose this here, you might say, well, this was in a private, or whatever that took place, that conversation, but
right.
It don't sound like the language that they would use in something like that.
Yes, and let me reiterate something. I discovered by going through these selectively picked cables, I started seeing some similar, the same names. I started seeing, you know, the State Department. You notice at the end they have whoever the senior diplomat is, and even the ones from State Department they end with Clinton or Rice or Powell. And I started seeing the name Gefeller. That's Gfoeller. And I noticed it because there were two cables bad-mouthing the British Royals. Now, look, I'm no great fan of the British Royals, but one was from Tatiana Gefeller, U.S. Ambassador to Kyrgyzstan, who basically was tattling on Prince Andrew, was at a meeting in Bishkek, and said that the U.S. they don't know about geography. Well, that happens. True, we don't. And then the other one was from her also. Before she was in Kyrgyzstan, she was the consul general in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. And there she was the one who tattled on some Saudi prince, shook down some businessman to refurbish the palace of the wife of the late King Faisal because he wanted to throw a lavish party for visiting Prince Charles. So this made that prince look bad and Prince Charles look bad. Anyway, I said, oh, well, it's the same person. She seems to have a problem with the British Royals. Well, it happens to be the fact that in Kyrgyzstan she has been working closely with George Soros's people. Soros and the British Royals do not get along because, you know, Soros tried to short the British pound at least twice, once in the early 90s and as late as this year. And then I noted her husband at the same time she's in Jeddah, he's the chargé d'affaires, Michael Gefeller. Guess who was at the meeting with the Saudi king when he said that we got to cut off the head of the snake? Well, her husband, Michael Gefeller. Now, my point is, it's quite clear that both these individuals, this husband-wife team, are very tight with AIPAC. Why would the Saudi king say something like that? He's got the Mukhabarat advising him about U.S. diplomats. Why would he say something like that about a fellow Muslim in front of an operative for the Israeli lobby in the United States?
Well, that's that's kind of my point there. To me, I'm not saying didn't happen or it wasn't spoken, but it just didn't sound. I mean, it just didn't sound right. I don't know.
Right. You know, if it were a government official in Paris or Berlin, you could say, well, maybe the guy had too much to drink. But hey, we're talking about the Saudi king here. You know, I know they can get it over there, but I doubt he would be imbibing and. If he were to do that, he wouldn't be doing it in front of Western diplomats, and most certainly not in front of somebody who's shilling for Israel.
Yeah, that's what I kind of figured. Anyway, thanks a lot. Good show.
Anyway, thanks for the call, and thanks for that's a very interesting point about the similarity in language between what we're hearing. It's like the neocons have this lexicon. You know, they go to their phrase book, they come up with the axis of evil, cut off the head of the snake. I mean, these boring individuals. They're not very intelligent. How could they control the world when they're not very intelligent? They're really kind of dumb. They love their phrases and they reuse them, like Netanyahu. Yeah, I mean, he couldn't contain his glee on 9/11 when he was on Fox News, and he couldn't contain his glee over these I mean, they show their cards. You want to play poker with these people because they'll take a haircut if you play poker with them. But anyway, let's listen to this. This was my point on this issue of WikiLeaks and these documents. When I was on RT this past week, I was asked about who benefited, and it's obvious who benefits. Cui bono, if we can hear this clip.
What I think is interesting is a lot of countries take hits. But one country, and they're even saying this themselves, is Israel. Now, my sources in the UN and from some of the countries that have not made to be they're not looking very good, are calling this the Wiki Israel leaks. Netanyahu, the worst thing they say about Netanyahu, he's a very charming person, but he doesn't keep his promises. We have Meir Dagan, the head of Mossad, telling a visiting U.S. Senator, John Corzine, the U.S. and Israel agree with Iran that there should be an attack. We have Spiegel now reporting that the national security advisors to ex-Prime Minister Sharon and Olmert said this is Israel benefits from these leaks. This is good for Israel. We have Netanyahu himself saying Israel is not harmed by any of these revelations. Who is harmed? The Arab countries are harmed. Iran is definitely harmed. Turkey, which has had an adversarial relationship with Israel, is harmed because we have some of the leaks stating that Erdogan hates Israel and that the U.S. Ambassador James Jeffrey in Ankara agreed with the Israeli ambassador in Ankara, Gabi Levy. So we have a lot of these documents, and it looks like they may have been cherry-picked. We don't have the cables from Bogota, Colombia out yet. We don't have the ones from Kathmandu, Nepal out yet. It seems to be very focused on Russia, Iran, Turkey, China, to name but a few, and Hugo Chavez in Venezuela, who Sarkozy's guy said, oh, he's crazy and he's turning his country into Zimbabwe.
Well, let's think about those countries that may be harmed, because when we think about the Iran issue and these Arab states, there's always been a disconnect between what the leaders of a lot of these Arab countries say publicly and their actions and what they're thinking, especially when it comes to not only Iran but also the Palestinian issue. Mm-hmm. So what kind of reaction could we see, from their own populations? Because let's not forget, and Ron here commenting on this said that this was the U.S. government releasing all this information.
Well, Ahmadinejad is calling it a psychological warfare operation, which it may be. Again, these are digital documents. We don't know if they've been altered, cherry-picked. It's hard. When you have a piece of paper, you can tell, like with the UN Oil for Food documents that were retrieved out of Baghdad, we could tell that there had been some alterations with liquid paper, for example. With a digital document, it's not that easy. I think there is probably some validity to the fact that at the very least, these documents were cherry-picked carefully to concentrate on Iran, China, Batman and Robin. Well, that's the question. The New York Times is now reporting that they did not receive these cables directly from WikiLeaks, that they received them from an anonymous intermediary. It'd be interesting to find out from the editor at the New York Times who that anonymous intermediary is. This story's not going away. I think the State Department would love to say some of these have been altered, but they don't want to go down that road because then, well, why these particular documents? They've got enough on their hands right now without bringing more attention on this.
They just have their, one line that says, this will harm people and, sort of condemning this. But very briefly, at the same time, though, if we think about the reaction from the Obama administration, they can also sort of point the finger and say, hey, look, we are pressured to take action against Iran, military action, but like we promised, we are taking the diplomatic approach. We're trying to negotiate. We're trying to, go the route of sanctions.
But, yeah, and with these revelations, it looks like the U.S., there's not much sunlight between the U.S. policy and that of Israel. We've got that from the head of Mossad, Dagan. We've got it from various other Israeli officials coming out as cables leaked from the U.S. Embassy in Tel Aviv. That makes it much more difficult for the U.S. to negotiate in any sort of arrangement with the EU and Russia and Iran right now because all this stuff is on the table.
And like you said, the story is not going away. Arctic contributor Wayne Madsen, thanks for your time.
Okay, well there it is, and since that aired a few days ago, we've now learned that the Turkish Interior Minister and the deputy head of the ruling Justice and Development Party, that's the ruling party in Turkey, both have said they believe that Israel was behind the WikiLeaks cable release. They've established a committee to investigate that. We also know that in a meeting between Hamid Karzai, the Afghan president, and Prime Minister of Pakistan, Gilani. Now, these are two countries that don't see eye to eye on many things. At a press conference in Kabul, they indicated that whoever's behind these leaks, is up to something, that there's some other party trying to make both these countries look bad. We have the former National Security Advisor to President Carter, Zbigniew Brzezinski, said in a televised interview that it looks like a foreign intelligence agency might be behind these leaks. Now, he knows he can't come out and say that because, he sees what happened to Helen Thomas when she's woefully honest. He's not going to come out and say it, but, let's face it, he's obviously talking about the Israelis because they're the only ones who benefited from it. When he said a foreign intelligence agency, he knows full well that Mossad has a long and sordid history of forgeries and forging passports. While I'm talking about that, the information that came out about the Condoleezza Rice and then Hillary Clinton requesting DNA, fingerprints, iris scan data, biometric data on UN officials, on the Secretary General, on world leaders, including all the leading presidential candidates in Paraguay. This, I think, is probably the biggest expose we've seen, because it comes right after we find out that every U.S. embassy in the world is conducting espionage on the local citizens. So, excuse me, I'm fighting off a cold. I'm surprised I still have my voice here. So what we've seen here is the State Department obviously being used by the CIA. The Financial Times reported that the request for DNA, fingerprints, and iris scan data came from the CIA. What nefarious things are they up to at the CIA these days to have the State Department act as the collection point for all this type of biometric information? If we had a Congress that meant anything, they would be holding hearings like the Church Committee, the Pike Committee, the ABSUG Subcommittee did back in the 1970s. But we have a Congress that's owned and operated by the military intelligence industrial complex. And we're not going to see anything out of these people. But, this is very nefarious. After we know about what the CIA was doing with MK Ultra, MK Delta, all the Technical Services Division, we know they were working on anthrax weapons. We know that they were working on anthrax weapons that could be used in the postal system. Does this all sound familiar? Using their contractor Battelle to come up with this type of stuff. That's what we're facing here. And we have the crickets chirping on Capitol Hill. No one's asking, why did the CIA want this information? Biogenetic weapons, possibly DNA to set people up, to blackmail people, possibly. I think there's some evidence that may have happened with Fernando Lugo, the president of Paraguay, with 3 paternity suits being brought against him shortly after he became president of that country, 2 of which were thrown out, 1 of which turned out positive. But if the CIA had the DNA, what did the CIA do with the DNA? I think that's what we're facing here. It's very worrisome. We've got an out-of-control Central Intelligence Agency all over again, and no one, not Ron Paul, not Bernie Sanders, not anyone in the Congress is asking any questions. And for those who think these Tea Party people are going to do anything, they have already been taken to the Heritage Foundation to be given their marching orders. This is what you're going to do in foreign policy. They're going to be controlled. If they're going to be crunched up into that machine in Congress. I don't care what they said during the campaign. Baloney. They're going to be part of the matrix once they're sworn in January. They're going to be good little foot soldiers, and they're going to do exactly what the Republican leadership tells them to do, every single one of them. They've already been told by Heritage what they have to do: support Israel, condemn Castro, no agreement with Cuba, condemn Russia, keep the Cold War going, support the military-industrial complex. That's the marching orders for the Tea Party, the new members of the House and the Senate. That's what they've been told, and they're going to carry out their orders like the good little foot soldiers for Dick Armey and John Boehner that they really are. And don't expect any other surprises from these people. Just like the firebrand Democrats that came in the last Congress said, we're going to do this and do that. Well, they became good little foot soldiers for the Democratic leadership. And many of them, because of that, got thrown out because Obama just washed his hands of them and said, to heck with you. He's got his own agenda. And I would note that Obama this past week was talking about past administrations. He said past Democrat and Republican administrations. Well, it's the Tea Party, it's the Rush Limbaughs, it's the Glenn Becks that use the term Democrat. He should have said past Democratic and Republican administrations. I think you got a plan here with Obama. I think the Republicans, they didn't want Hillary Clinton in there. These old men, these old white men. Oh no woman. She's going to be coronated. So they came up with this Obama and ran him, and he's their boy. I don't mean anything racist by that term. He's their boy. He carries the water for them, just like the good little CIA guy he was. His family was. They got this guy, handpicked him out of Chicago, groomed him, and he's basically taking orders from the Republican hierarchy. He does everything they expect him to do, and that's what you've got with Barack Obama, the good foot soldier, talking about past Democrat administrations. What's he doing? Channeling Rush Limbaugh? Channeling Glenn Beck? We'll be right back after this short break. This is Wayne Madsen from Washington.